Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I've got a full review to do for you that has been honestly a really long time coming. So I've had this knife in my possession for a few months. This is a prototype of the Artisan Cutlery Nick Rogers of Nitch Designs collaboration. It'll be released as an Artisan Cutlery product. It is a knife called the Ahab, after the captain in Moby Dick. It's been a long time since I've read Moby Dick, so I believe that is the tie-in there. But ever since these prototypes first came out, I was kind of there. It was at Blade Show West last year that they first showed them off, and Nick is a buddy of mine. We have met up quite a few times. We actually rode and stayed together for USN show last year. He lives fairly close to me. We've hiked together a few times. He's a great dude. Because he had a few prototypes, he let me borrow one to check out, but I wasn't supposed to really start talking about it until some decisions were made within Artisan about what the final rendition of this would look like, what some subtle changes would be, and all of that. So this is a fully functional prototype, but there will be a few changes for production. I'll talk about those things, but I wanted to go over my review of this knife and just kind of talk about it. So some of you may remember Nitch Designs from his first knife, which I believe was called the Ingress. It was a knife he was going to have OEM'd by We Knives, and it ended up not happening on Kickstarter. It just didn't quite get there. And I think a big part of that was just that the knife was different, maybe a little too different compared to what people were used to. But having reviewed a prototype of that knife as well, I kind of fell in love with the type of design work that Nick does, because he designs really functional things, and although they tend to look like a departure from what's totally normal, they look cool to me, and maybe that's partly because they function so well for me. All of the knives that he's designed that I've had the opportunity to handle and use have been functionally wonderful. And so I think part of it is because I love how functional they are, I grow to love what they look like. But this is a unique looking knife, and with this harpoon blade shape and some of it being a little bit fish-like, I think the tie-in to Moby Dick is relevant here. But it is a masterpiece of cutting. It's a giant, super tall, flat grind in a blade shape that's super usable. I love Wharncliffes. You've got a swedged harpoon that just adds some drama there. You've got a handle shape that looks unlike pretty much any knife that I can recollect. And then internally you've got a lot going on. You've got hidden pivots. You've got scales that cover up like some very important pieces of hardware that are normally exposed. There's just a lot happening, and there's a blog post on Nick's site, maybe I'll link that as well, where he talks about his design process on this knife, and I think it's a really important read because it shows you how incredible his mind is at doing this, at designing knives, and how thorough he is. So let's talk about where this knife is going to be placed in the market first. I believe the plan at the moment is to do a version of these in AR RPM 9 steel, which is Artisan's proprietary steel, with G10 scales, and those will be probably just sub $100. And then there will be a more premium version also under the Artisan label that will have scale materials like micarta, such as this, and probably be an S35VN. And those will be a little more. So there's going to be a couple of iterations, and I'm excited to see what those look like in terms of color scheme and specifications and all that. And then I'm really excited to own one and carry it and use it, because it does so many things that I really like, and it's really different at the same time, which is fun at this point when a lot of knives seem very similar to one another. So yeah, I pulled this up because I figured people will ask when they'll be available. Right now, it says on his blog post that Artisan is aiming to have these available, the first production batch, at Blade Show Atlanta in 2022 this year. So that's June 3rd through 5th, which is really exciting. I'll be there at that show. So yeah, in Atlanta, June 3rd through 5th at Blade Show is the projected like release of this knife, if you will. I'm hoping they have all of the versions there and that I can pick one up. So yeah, that's really exciting. There's a timeline. It's in progress at this point. I know that when licensing a design to a production company or to a brand like Artisan or an equivalent, sometimes it can take quite a while from when you originally get them to sign on to use that design of yours to when the knives actually hit the market. So it's got to be really exciting that that's now happening. Let's talk a couple of changes real quick as well before I jump into this review, because I think the changes are probably going to come up in one or two places. And so it's nice to know beforehand maybe that these changes are already happening, because some of the like small gripes I have with the knife are being solved already. They're not things that will be the same on the production knife. So the first one is that the thumb studs are going to change from being really proud. These are very tall thumb studs. You can see they sit a little bit taller than the scale itself. They're going to be shrunk down so that they will be lower than the scale material itself. This is a kind of a screen grab from that blog post describing that they're going to get shorter so that they don't sit proud of the scale anymore. And that solves one of the very few issues I had with the knife, where too often when I go to pull this knife out of my pocket, because the thumb stud is so proud, it almost acts like an Emerson wave, and I would have the knife deploy as I was pulling it out of pocket, not expecting it to. Another one is this handle shape is going to be revised slightly. So this point here is going to be moved back so that this forward groove will be elongated a little bit more, so it's easier to fit two fingers in it, and it's going to be rounded. It won't be quite as pointy as it is now. So I think that'll be a welcome change. I do sometimes feel like it's a little tight for me to get two fingers in there. I feel a little bit forced into that. So adding just a little bit more room and rounding that point, I think, is going to be a good thing. Here's the screen grab of what that is going to look like. Not super dramatic, but it is going to be a change that will make a difference. The last thing that is like a definite change is that there will be some chamfering up here on this kind of primary like section of the spine. So I think that'll be cool. It'll kind of soften it up a little bit. It is a little bit of a harsh edge. I think it'll also look good, give a little bit of definition to that line. And then also down here, where this kind of jimping and choil-ish spot, that will have the same type of chamfering. So a little bit of chamfering being added in a couple of necessary spots. So that is pretty cool. Some updates that aren't for sure but are likely going to happen are going to be simple little things, like instead of there being some T6 hardware on here, it'll be all T8. A couple of little internal hardware adjustments. A big one would be on the detent ball placement. They're looking to revise that just slightly so that this track won't be so exposed. You can see it's going right through the laser marking here on the prototype. So I think that'll be good as well if that gets moved down so that that track isn't so exposed like it is now. Is it the end of the world if that stays exposed? No. Functionally, it doesn't make a difference on the knife, but aesthetically, to have your detent ball running a track through your laser markings is not the prettiest thing in the world. So those are the couple of changes. I think they're all going to be good, because honestly, my gripes with the knife are really kind of those things. I don't love that these thumb studs are a little bit snaggy on my pocket. I don't love that this point is as pointy as it is. I would like for that to be a little more rounded, and the fact that this space is getting a little bigger along with that, I think will be nice. It'll improve the ergonomics. I think a little chamfering, again, is just going to kind of soften it up. I think those things are going to be really, really good on this knife. So that being said, let's go into Ergo's carry, cutting, action, all that kind of stuff. Ergonomically, even without that change, this knife is still quite comfortable. These micarta scales are contoured in a really nice way. All of the edges are super soft. It feels unique because it's a very thin knife, but because it has the contouring, it's almost like deceptively hand-filling, and it's tall too, right? So it's still plenty to hold on to. If you made a knife this thin and it wasn't as tall as it is up here, I feel like it would feel too small. But in this case, it feels really, really good in hand. And it feels really indexed because the whole thing feels kind of flat. I guess it's contoured, but it feels, I don't know, like you're certain of which direction this knife is pointing. And I like that. Yeah, so when I'm in a saber grip, super comfortable. Having the harpoon there is just really, really satisfying as having like a place for your thumb to go and knowing where that should be. It also makes me feel less prone to slipping forward. And on a knife designed like this, where the choil kind of terminates right at sharpened edge, that's a welcome thing to know. I know where I'm at, right? I know not to go any further than that, and having that harpoon there is nice. In a hammer grip, also very comfortable. I feel really choked up on the edge here, so if I was feather sticking or something where I want to be real close to that edge, that's a super comfortable grip to do it in. Reverse grip draw cut. I don't know how many people are going to do this, but it is magnificent on this knife. It's really, really good. Standard reverse grip, almost as comfortable as having it in reverse grip draw cut, but the angle of this is a little pokey back up here for me to wrap my thumb around, but totally doable. That's comfortable. And forward draw cut is also very comfortable. This handle, you would think, or I would think, that having that point right there might be annoying in a grip like this, but it's really not so pointy, even pre-change to being more rounded, to really like dig into me. It doesn't bother me. So ergonomically, I like this knife a lot. For a handle that looks so unique and so shaped, I'm impressed with how comfortable it is in hand overall. Let's talk action next. So assuming that this version of the knife, even though it's the RPM 9 steel, it has the nicer scales, it's not G10. This is kind of like the nicer build. I guess it would sit kind of in the middle because it's got components of each, but the action on this knife, what I'm getting at, is way better than I would expect from a knife in this price point, and I'm impressed that Artisan got it here. My only worry about these thumb studs getting smaller is that they'll be less wonderful to play with, because my goodness, this thing is a fidget dream like I was not expecting at all. It is drop shutty. It is authoritatively thwacky. I just messed it up by grabbing onto the thumb stud too much, but it just fires out. The detent is dialed great. I'm incredibly impressed with how nice this knife is to thumb flick or to middle finger flick. Both are really, really good. And not a lot of thumb stud knives are this good at middle finger flicking. So that makes me happy as somebody whose favorite method to deploy a knife is to middle finger flick it. It's just really, really good at it. Yeah, this knife at this price point honestly has no business being this good. It's impressive to me that it's where it is. So action is just very, very good. These bearings are dialed super well. If it feels like this in production, I will be elated. Let's talk about carry. So this one has a milled titanium clip. I've seen some of his renderings with a wire clip. I think, I could be wrong, so if I am, I'm sorry, but I think there may be a wire clip version that might come. It also might be that the wire clip was just in some renderings and they're not actually moving forward with it. They might all be milled titanium clips. Sorry, Nick, if I just added confusion, but this one has a milled titanium clip on it, and honestly, it functions really, really well. Nothing about this clip is pointy or sharp. That's always like the number one thing that kills milled titanium clips for me, is when they have a sharp point. It just bugs the crap out of me. But this one is not. It's smooth everywhere, even up here where it kind of ends. It's very, very nice. You'll see it carries reasonably deep for a milled titanium clip, especially with a handle shaped like this where you've got kind of a point. That's not that much to have sticking out of your pocket. It's about all you'll get right there. I like that. It feels really good. In and out of pocket, it's nice and smooth. It's incredibly slim overall. And even though it's kind of tall this way, just because it's so slim and sits so flat, it's really, really comfortable in pocket. Plus, this has nested full liners on both sides. And this is the most internal skeletonizing I've ever seen on a nested liner lock. And I want to say Nick's inspiration was like a fish skeleton or maybe a bird skeleton or something. It looks skeletal inside, but like it's from a sea creature or something. It's just a lot of material removed out of these liners. They are steel liners, but with the amount of material removed from them, it's just a really lightweight feeling knife, and in pocket that shines through as well. So I love how much internal milling is happening here, and I love what that does to the overall just feel of it. So yeah, we've talked ergos, carry, and action. That leaves cutting, and that's arguably the best part of this knife. It is stupid thin behind the edge because of this really tall flat grind, and it just slices like it was designed to do it, and frankly it was. It's a really impressive slicing blade. Plus you've got a really precise tip, and because it's a Wharncliffe and you've got that harpoon there, you can do cool things like this and just kind of like make really precise dragging cuts through things. It's wonderful to cut with. One of my favorite knives to actually slice with that I can think of. As folders go, it is really, really geometrically wonderful to use. I just love how effortless it goes through things. Yeah, it's just, I don't know how to say anything about it other than it's top of the charts good at slicing. And I feel like that makes sense if you know Nick and you know the way he thinks about knives. And if you look at his design language, that's something that's clearly important to him, is the functional ability of the blade. And this is a blade that just wants to do work. And it's not an abuser knife where you're going to be wanting to turn screws with the tip and pry things. That's not what it is. It is a slicing knife, and it is wonderful at slicing. I put it through a bunch of cardboard. I put it through some apples. I've put it through zip ties. I've put it through thread. I even had a t-shirt that I wanted to cut pieces off of when I was sharpening the other day, so I had some like rags to use. I cut through old t-shirt with it, and it slices really, really well for a pocket knife. I've been impressed with it at every step of the way. So it's super lightweight, super slim, carries really well. It fits great in my hand. It cuts really well. The action is super fun. Like, I don't know what else to want from it, really, other than the couple of little changes that are already happening, like I already mentioned. So I wish I had another, like, inspiring thing to tell Nick, like, oh, if you change this, it'll make it even better. But it's honestly just already really, really good. And the fact that it'll come in at a relatively budget-friendly segment and price point, I think is going to be really cool, because this is just such a great user knife for someone who's looking for a great EDC knife to have in their pocket. So yeah, well done to Nick. I tip my hat to you, sir. I'm impressed in quite a few ways about this knife, and I think it's one of those things that's like, I know that it looks a little funky, right? And so I hope a lot of people give it a shot amidst it looking a little funky. I think it's going to be a polarizing design to look at, and that's kind of what happened with his first knife, was it was just polarizing to look at. But this knife, when you get it in hand and you use it, I feel like it clicks, or at least it did for me, and it makes so much sense, and I love it now. I really, really like it so much, and I need to have one when they come out. So yeah, I guess that'll be it. That's kind of my full review here. Maybe you will completely distrust everything I just said because Nick is a buddy of mine and I want him to succeed. and he is a buddy of mine, and I do want him to succeed. But I also tried to look at this knife as objectively as I could, which is impossible to do completely because those things are true. He's my buddy and I want him to succeed. But I was also looking for things to give him feedback on. And I've had some conversations with Nick about the knife already, and the things I would give feedback on are already being fixed. So I think that's really, really cool. Anyway, thank you guys for checking it out. I will link down below to all of the Nitch Designs things that I can think of, and to Artisan, who will be releasing this knife, so that you can check it out and see it there. And yeah, if you're going to be at Blade Show in Atlanta, this will be one to look out for because it is freaking sweet. All right, thanks for checking it out, guys. I'll see you on the next one.